Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. Tonight's topic will be borderline personality disorder, and also combining with what they used to call psychopath, which is now called antisocial personality disorder. We're going to blend the two because they do occur together, and again, they're just labels, which you can pick each label, whatever, and chances are the traits are there either way. According to the DSM, you know what that is. In order for a person to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, they have to at least meet 5 or more of the following symptoms: frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment, a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation, identity disturbance, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self, impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging, such as spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating, recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats, or self-mutilating behavior, affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood, such as intense episodic dysphoria, irritability or anxiety, usually lasting a few hours and only rarely more than a few days, chronic feelings of emptiness, inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger, such as frequent displays of temper, constant anger, and recurrent physical fights, transient, stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. Now, I'm taking this information from Jackson Mackenzie's book, Psychopath Free, and he states that in borderline interpersonal relationships, these symptoms lead to early idealization and honeymoon phase, where they will groom you to become a constant source of positive energy, temporarily satisfying their pathological feelings of emptiness. But because they're also angry and impulsive, you will quickly start to discover that there really won't be any room for your happiness. Once you fail to meet their rapidly shifting standards, you'll be devalued and criticized until you have nothing left to offer them. The stark contrast between the idealization and devaluation leaves you feeling worthless, broken, and confused. Well, then we switch over to the antisocial personality disorder. You gotta have 3 or more of these. Failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Manipulativeness, frequent use of subterfuge to influence or control others, using seduction, charm, glibness, or ingratiation to achieve one's ends. Deceitfulness, as indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Impulsivity, or failure to plan ahead. Irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. Reckless disregard for safety of self or others. And consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or to honor financial obligations. And the last one is lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. In the interpersonal relationships, this leads to early idealization in the honeymoon phase, where you'll be groomed to be a constant source of positive energy. We've already said this. The main thing that I personally find Jackson Mackenzie's book actually superior to some of the others. He has no qualifications to his name. He's just Jackson Mackenzie. There is no fancy PhD or anything after his name. And quite frankly, I found a lot of great information in his book. And he doesn't have any PhD as far as we know. And he's got a lot of good information, so it's kind of strange. It's like he really knows his stuff. He states, if someone's opinion of you goes from sky high to rock bottom, this isn't normal. When you first meet someone with a cluster B personality disorder, it'll seem that all your dreams have finally come true. We know what they'll do. They'll shower you with praise and fake love and focus all their energy on everything to do with you. And you'll start to feel like you're the only person in the world. But, as you can see from the symptoms we've discussed earlier, none of this is genuine. It's all based on a pathological need for something, whether it's admiration, filling up the emptiness in their lives, attention, and or control. The bottom line is, the idealization is certainly not based on your own unique qualities. Because with these cluster B monsters, you are not viewed as a human being with feelings. You are viewed as a way to fill whatever emotional deficiency this person you're dealing with disorder entails. Similar to brainwashing behavior by cults, the idealization is simply a fake way to secure your trust and love so that you'll ultimately become a reliable source of nourishment for their pathological needs. Now, once you fail to meet the impossible and impulsive demands, your dream quickly shifts into a nightmare where you feel constantly on the edge, unable to express yourself. Every attempt at compassion and empathy falls on deaf ears. None of the regular interpersonal strategies you usually use seem to work anymore. You really start to believe you've gone crazy, even though you've never felt this way until this particular monster came into your life. The old cheerful self and that you used to have rapidly dissolves into a paranoid mess of anxiety, desperation, and obsession. Now, Jackson says that this is abusive and destructive, and he believes that something needs to change. Next, Jackson makes an interesting point. He says that what makes the cluster B disorders so unique and sensitive is because they allow a person to appear completely healthy and loving, oftentimes more so than a non-disordered individual, and the person uses this facade of normalcy to cause harm to anyone unfortunate enough to cross their path. And this is a problem posed by no other mental or physical ailment. Now, of course, some of us may be drawn to help or heal these people, but he says he's going to be blunt. He says, this is not my concern. There are psychologists and scientists out there working really hard to understand and treat these disorders, but for now, they remain incurable, untreatable, and widespread. So he's stating now, well, with this situation the way it is, what are the rest of us supposed to do to protect ourselves? He believes the first step is education. Getting the word out there. Helping people to see that most psychopaths are not Ted Bundy. The next thing he says is validation, which is helping victims through the darkness and showing them that they're not alone. Sharing experiences with one another and understanding how we were manipulated. At first, your personal story might feel too crazy for words. But isn't that always the case when dealing with cluster B monsters? With the right keywords and labels, you'll suddenly find millions of people who have gone through identical nightmares. And the next step is healing, shifting the focus from the abuser to the abused, understanding what you truly lost from this terrible experience, and much more importantly, what can be gained. Forming healthy boundaries and finding self-respect. Examining your own insecurities and vulnerabilities so that you can ultimately seek out happier and healthier relationships. And the final step is freedom. Once you're able to identify and recognize toxic people, you'll realize that nothing can be gained by interacting with these monsters. And instead of trying to fix these broken monsters, you should devote your valuable energy to equally empathetic friends and partners. No matter what they might promise, those with these cluster B disorders cannot and will not change for you. Now, once these steps are in place, we have small ways of dealing with big problems. Our freedom allows us to live a life safe from harm in our interpersonal relationships. But what happens when we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, at the society, corporations, and our culture? He ends this section by stating, we have a problem, that's for sure, but he's an optimist. And optimists have their own screwed up need to find solutions.
Now, just in case you're a little confused and wonder, how do these things equate to me using you? Well, I made sure to tell you at any opportunity just how horrible life was with my poor roommate. And I was hoping you'd get the hint and eventually ask me to stay with you. Well, when that didn't happen, I knew you had the car, I knew you had the home, so I called you that night in a fit of tears about how I just didn't know what I was going to do. I can't stay here one more night with these awful roommates. And you took the bait and you asked me to stay with you. So how did I use you for 1 and 2? Bingo! And what ties into this is that you have a sweet nature which allowed number 1 and 2 to occur.